Hello and welcome to post-match Everything Black White podcast with me, Sean McCormick, Newcastle United reporter here at Chronicle Live, and I'm joined as always by Chief Newcastle United writer at Chronicle Live, Lee Ryder. We're in St James's Park in the aftermath of a 2-1 defeat to Bayern Leverkusen. Just to address the elephant in the room, if you watched the last podcast, I'm okay. After Seagull Gate, there are a few birds flying around, so I'm feeling a bit worried. But in the name of content, if it happens again, we'll carry on and be professional again. But if you haven't watched that video, you can go back and watch the post-match verdict from Murrayfield if you want a bit of a laugh at a bird pooing on me during a recording. But anyway, back to the serious stuff. Newcastle beaten by Bayern Leverkusen today 2-1, obviously splitting the squads across today's game and tomorrow's game against Strasbourg. But they named a pretty strong team today, beaten 2-1, but I think probably best to focus on the shoots of progress maybe that we're seeing under Matthias Jaissle. We'll focus on some of the negatives as well, but I think that we are starting to see certain signs that they are beginning to pick up the manager's message. Would you agree?
Yeah, I did try and do that in the press conference earlier. If anybody sees it, I did try and team up with three positives, but I think the one word he did pick up on that he probably didn't like was disappointing, because in his eyes he probably sees this as a meaningless friendly, but at the end of the day it was an opportunity to start on a winning note here. Now look, we'd all swap whatever happens this weekend for 3 points next weekend against Liverpool, and I just think that he's learning what it's all about. I mean, his intensity on the pitch, I think the Newcastle public and media are intensity off the pitch. We love football. We want to talk about it 24/7, and we're never going to change that. So I think there's positives to come from today, but also some concerns, some worries, and certainly some gaps in that squad, which has now been made even more, the case with Joe Linton picking up an injury.
Yeah, I mean, he was asked about transfers. What's becoming increasingly clear is he's not going to speak about transfers.
Yeah, would you say he's a very guarded coach? And would you also sort of say, I don't think he's used to this level of questioning?
Possibly. I mean, it's early days, isn't it? Because listen, he's 2 weeks into the job, really. Less than that, actually, if you look at the official announcement. I do think with transfers, it is the way now that you don't really get given much. Eddie Howe never really gave much away when you asked him about it, but he's completely shutting down any question. He says that that's not for the press conference. In terms of the scrutiny, I did think he was a bit spiky today, a couple of questions. Now, they weren't necessarily pointed or tough questions or criticising or anything like that, wasn't it? There was nothing like that, I don't think. But no. I think what we've alluded to it on the podcast a couple of times, that he definitely doesn't suffer fools. He definitely sort of shoots from the hip, I think, with some of his answers. And I think if we give him any sort of room to be like, what was the question? Or if we repeat a question or ask a vaguely similar question to someone else, he calls it out, doesn't he? And listen, that probably ups our game to ask good questions, I guess, but also if things start going awry, it doesn't necessarily endear him to the press pack. And I guess if people are watching it and he's being a bit spiky like that, it might not endear him to the public. Now listen, this is really early days and the competitive stuff hasn't even started yet, but didn't like a couple of questions, did he? That's probably the top and bottom.
I just think that, are you going to start firing in the real sort of big questions? I mean, obviously we're always going to ask big questions, but the real tough questions will come as the season goes on, and we're getting to know him, he's getting to know us, and I can kind of see a little bit of tension. I mean, he did try and laugh off some of that, what you're saying there. I just wonder, the Saudi Pro League press conferences, the Austrian Bundesliga press conferences, I'm not sure they're going to be flying transfer questions and recruitment and political questions in on a basic news conference. He's not doing a press conference tomorrow. We've already been told that. This was it. This was your hit for the weekend. I found that interesting. I thought if something major happens in the game tomorrow, I think the manager should be the first one to talk about it, not a player.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to kind of happen. So I just wonder what the level of questions are like in other press conferences in leagues he's been in. But also, the second thing I want to say, just quickly before you have your say on it, is he's a head coach, a European head coach. I'm not sure feels it's his position to answer questions on transfers, because that's normally the role of a sporting director.
Yeah.
We've both written pieces before from when a Bundesliga player's been linked. Where are you getting the quotes from? The sporting director.
Yes.
At Bayern Munich, Dortmund, wherever. I don't think he sees it as his role to answer questions on transfers. I might be wrong.
No,
it feels that way.
I think that's a really good point, actually. And to be fair, it isn't his rule. If we're
when you're looking at that model,
if we're analysing the way that this summer's played out, and we're analysing what Eddie Howe was saying before Jaissle was appointed, the transfers are solely with Ross Wilson and his team. And Jaissle said as much, didn't he, on, I want to say, Tuesday, when he first name-checked Wilson. Obviously, it was the sporting director before that. We know that Eddie Howe was giving us similar answers as well. And as you say, it's the way that football is now. It isn't his responsibility. So maybe you're right, and perhaps that's where, sporting directors, if this model continues, need to have a bit more sort of public-facing questions. I mean, we have spoken to Ross Wilson a couple of times on the record, but maybe, at the end of the window, it'd be a good opportunity for him to sort of really explain, the thinking behind this window. That'll be an interesting one to follow. In terms of, the scrutiny, I don't necessarily think the scrutiny was that bad today. I don't necessarily think the scrutiny will be much different from the other clubs. I think what the big difference is the amount of journalists that cover Newcastle United. It's a big club in the biggest league in the world, and maybe that's something for him to get his head around. But listen, we don't want to batter anything too much. We don't want to blow anything out of proportion. It was just an interesting observation. That was the fourth time we've spoken to him on the record, maybe the fifth. And it just felt like a bit of fight, a bit of bite, a bit of personality coming out. But we'll move on to matters off the pitch before we go on to matters on the pitch. Straight after the game today, it was publicly announced that Dan Burn is the new club captain. We imagine we'll see Dan Burn play tomorrow. He didn't play today. So we'll see Dan Burn for the first time under Matthias Jaissle, and it's the first time since being appointed as club captain against Strasbourg tomorrow. But initial thoughts on that one? To me, it's a no-brainer.
No-brainer. I think he may as well have just announced that last week, because when you look around what he's got, Dan Burn is the key guy there. He's obviously had a good chat with him. There's now a wasp flying around as well, so just to put that one out there. So we're on some run here. But Dan Burn for me is the supreme candidate.
Yeah.
Whether that means he's going to play every week, I don't know. I mean, for me, a few days ago you'd put Dan Burn straight in there against Liverpool. I still do. Botman had a better game today, thankfully. But still, a lot of work to be done for him. But yeah, Dan Burn easily the supreme candidate. A little bit surprised maybe at Joe Linton being the vice captain. That was his answer to you. He just kept throwing random things in, didn't he? When not really sort of pressed. That was one of them. And the injury as well was just on the back of another question about something completely different as well. So yeah, a lot of sort of random stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of the appointment of the captain, yes for Dan Burn. Joe Linton, bit surprised, but look, he's been a leader in the dressing room before. He knows Jaissle from his Hoffenheim days. It's an interesting choice, but we thought it would be Chow, didn't we? We thought he would possibly be team captain, but here we are. It's Burn and Joe Linton. Yeah,
I mean, that was the question I asked was, Malik Chow's captained the team 2 out of the last 3 games. He was captain again today. Is he going to be the vice captain? And Jaissle basically came out and said Joe Linton's the vice captain. So as I say, it was a sort of a bomb thrown from nowhere. I guess it puts an end to any sort of speculation that he's leaving the club. And then I guess the next question is, if he is vice captain and going to take a big role, the way that we're playing, Newcastle are playing at the minute, 4-2-3-1, 2 midfielders, a sort of number 10 behind the striker, and two natural wingers. Where does Joe Linton fit into that? Because I think he struggled the other night in a midfield too.
Yeah, I mean, he's just obviously he's not getting any younger. Birthday the other day. This is probably going to be his last Premier League club, I would say. And for me, where'd you play him? I mean, he's had an incredible sort of journey from front to back, and he even played centre half a couple of times. So it's the stoppage time board's just gone up there from one of the press stewards who's I think he wants to get away for a drink or something.
We'll try and get another 5 minutes in, don't worry.
Yeah. Let's hope that this is the start of something good for him, but ultimately for me, I don't know where you put him in that team.
Right, let's try and rattle up the key points from the game then before we get kicked out of St James's Park. Good place to start. Mason Miley played right back today. We understand that Amar Dedic probably will be a Newcastle player before the Liverpool game, and that means he probably will, barring any fitness issues, start at right back against Liverpool. But 17-year-old, younger brother of Lewis, which is obviously a big footsteps to follow. But I thought he played fantastic today. Jaissle said he loved his heart. He loved how he gave everything out there on the pitch. And in a pretty, in terms of the options to play, the only real youngster without any real experience in there, but I thought didn't look out of place whatsoever.
No, for me, he would be, regardless of if Dedic signs or not, I would have Mason Miley in against Liverpool on the opening day at 17. I think he did everything that was asked of him there today. The crowd were getting behind everything he did. That's important, by the way, as well. The connection, the energy with the crowd. Reminding me of probably Steve Watson back in the day. Young Geordie lad being thrown in the team, giving everything he's got, and I think he's probably been Newcastle's highlight of pre-season. Something you probably wouldn't have predicted.
No.
But he's in there. He's played the minutes. He's entitled, for me, to be in and around that starting lineup against Liverpool. It's now the question. We were told over in La Manga, this manager's brave. This manager will play youngsters.
Trust youngsters.
And he'll put them in if he sees fit. Well, it's going to be that's his first test of it. Does he put him in against Liverpool? Because, let's say Dedic signs this week, he's not going to have much time to get to know the systems, his teammates. I'm sure he's match fit. He's played enough football with Benfica.
Yeah.
But for me, Mason Miley knows everything that's gone on in pre-season. Managed to give him a big hug when he came off. For me, starting him against Liverpool is a no-brainer. It's whether you're brave enough to do it.
Yeah, it's a big decision, obviously, and I think what could happen is if he doesn't play that Liverpool game, obviously West Brom's 3 days later, Team Liverpool isn't any closer to returning. If he doesn't play that Liverpool game, surely he's a shoe-in to start that game against West Brom. And I think the difference when obviously Leo Shahar started right back the 2 games prior to this, and Miley's come on at half-time to replace him. Well, now you've asked about Shahar, he praises him, but there's always been a bit of guarding in terms of he's a young player. Let's not throw academy lads in too early in the deep end. It was a much different rhetoric, I thought, with Mason Miley today. Your question where he was talking about him, he was full of praise, and yes, he was sort of holding back and saying there's still time in the transfer market and whatnot. But I do think that he really likes him, and this could be a year where he hangs around the first team squad. Learns. He's a midfielder by trade as well, so just like Lewis, he's done fantastically at right back, so bodes really well. Just again, we'll try and wrap this up pretty quickly, but just in terms of the rest of the game, Lee, couple of good signs with the pressing. They're going to be aggressive. They had at one point in the goal kick 5 players on top of Bayern Leverkusen's penalty box, so I think that's going to be exciting to watch. It's risky, it's brave, but if it pays off, then that's going to be good. I thought Visser was pretty sharp today again, which is a real positive. But I think the worry, and we'll end on this note, is they still don't look like they're creating a lot of chances. I still worry about where the goals are coming from in this team, and it's not to bash Nick Voltemada because he's not the only one who didn't necessarily create the chances today, but he came off 86 minutes, and Sean Neve, who we expect to go out on loan, came on. They created 2 chances straight away when he come on. I know the game's stretched and Newcastle are pushing for it, but I just felt it was a bit of a damning indictment of how little impact Voltemada's had in pre-season, and My fear, and I don't know if you share this, is just where the goals are going to come from. Vissa does look sharp. Hopefully he bangs in the goals, but I do worry about certainly the lack of creativity in the team.
Yeah, only 2 big chances created today.
Yeah.
One of them was obviously the goal, and the other one was Jaissle laying it off Voltemada, and he made a mess of it. I don't think anything. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head that was clear cut. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think at the end, Barnes had that one when Vissa flashed it across the face. Probably could have done better, but
should have. It was probably easier to score after
Yeah.
that. So not enough for all this pressing. What are you going to get from all this pressing? We've had like build-up play in the past. Crosses going in from Jacob Murphy, and Anthony Gordon at one stage as well. He's gone now. It's now a case of how do we get the goals, and at the minute that is a bit of a worrying sign. But conceding them as well is also a big issue. So we could probably stand here all night and talk about that, but we will let people.
We'll let people wrap up. We'll be back tomorrow for the Strasbourg game. We'll assess that. Obviously, it's expected to be a completely different lineup, so we'll probably be able to give you a better idea of where we think Jaissle's lineup's going to look like against Liverpool. Quick thanks to our sponsors as always, NordVPN and Sadie. You can find all the promotions in the comment section below. But until tomorrow, thanks for joining us again, and we'll be back at St James's Park bright and early for a double header. The women play, and then it's Newcastle versus Strasbourg. So until then, see you next time, guys.